GameDay Garage presents Campus Blitz with PJ Glasser and Ryan Horvath.
Welcome in GameDay Garage's Campus Blitz. I'm PJ Glasser. Ryan Horvath out sick today, so it'll just be me solo, but excited for today's episode. We previewed the ACC, the Big 12. Today we preview the SEC. We got 9 great guests on over the next 90 minutes to talk about some of these teams in the SEC, and we will start things off with Alabama. Wyatt Fulton joins me, host of the Deep South College Football Show. Give Wyatt a follow on X at FultonW_. Wyatt, appreciate you joining me, man. What's going on?
PJ, thank you for having me, man. Excited to talk a little Alabama football as the season's getting closer.
Man, always excited. Roll Tide, good to be with you. You know I'm a Bama grad, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Let's start with the big question, because all these top college football teams this year, they either got a quarterback that's returning, or it could be like an LSU's case where they got a guy like Sam Leavitt who's played some college ball and he transfers in. Bama's kind of one of those top teams where it's a big question mark at QB. It's either going to be Austin Mack, Keelan Russell. If they had to play a game tomorrow, who do you think the starting quarterback would be for the Tide?
I think it would be Austin Mack, just because he's the guy that, is that veteran. He's got, a little bit more experience than what Keelan Russell's got, and he's been in the system for a couple of seasons. But I will say, I do think as of right now, it is a slight lean towards Austin Mack, but I think by the time we get through the first couple of scrimmages, it could be Keelan Russell. And I do think it ends up being Keelan Russell just because of the dynamic aspect that he brings to this offense. Austin Mack is a very good quarterback, but he maybe isn't quite up to the same level as Keelan Russell when it comes to getting outside of the pocket and making plays at a high percentage outside of the pocket. But right now, if they were playing on, August the 13th, I do think Austin Mack would get the start.
Okay, very interesting. They kick off the season against East Carolina week 1 and then have an SEC game week 2 on the road at Kentucky. Wyatt, I've been telling people, I think the 2 biggest question marks for Bama this season, especially on offense, is quarterback and then offensive line, because they couldn't run the ball last year. They had issues protecting. They revamped it a little bit in the offseason. So what do you expect that new look O-line to look like this year?
I expect the new look offensive line to take a step in the right direction. Now, that's not to say Alabama's going to go out and run for, 190 yards a game. That's not at all what they're going to be doing this season. But you averaged 104 yards per game in the run game last season. Against Power 4 competition, that number dropped to like 84 or something like that. So not good. But you're expecting that to take a step in the right direction with the addition of Adrian Clem, the former Oregon, New England Patriot, and Pittsburgh Steeler offensive line coach, and you bring in 11 new faces. So this is a run game that there's going to be some growing pains throughout the season. I expect them to struggle against, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, just because they bring really, really good defensive lines to the table that, do a really good job of stopping the run. But I don't expect them to struggle in the run game against inferior competition, much inferior competition, like an East Carolina will be in week number 1. No disrespect to the Pirates, but the talent level isn't quite the same as what it is in Tuscaloosa. And another good thing is everybody on this offensive line has eligibility for next season. They could theoretically come back. So an offensive line unit that's been regressing for the last, I'd say, 5 years since that 2020 national championship, an offensive line unit that has been viewed as a weakness for 5-6 consecutive seasons now suddenly might be one of your biggest strengths in 2027, but you got to get through 2026 first.
Yeah, no doubt. Another guy that Bama's going to need to step up this year on offense is Ryan Williams. He was unbelievable for much of the year as a freshman. Last year, disappointed compared to expectation. How has he looked so far in camp and the rest of this wide receiver group?
Ryan Coleman Williams has looked really, really good to start camp. They're really excited for what he can bring to the table as a junior. And sophomore slumps is not unheard of, right? There's a reason it's called a sophomore slump. And Alabama receivers have had that kind of in the past, right? Julio Jones was much better as a freshman and a junior than he was a sophomore. Amari Cooper had a really big slump as a sophomore and then was unstoppable as a junior. Calvin Ridley the same way. So I'm not saying he's, the next Amari Cooper, the next Julio Jones, but I do think you see Ryan Coleman Williams take a step in the right direction. One of the biggest criticisms around him has been catching with his body and not with his hands at wide receiver. And it looks like through the limited fall camp practices that we've been able to see and what we've been hearing out of fall camp is that that's what he's worked on. He's catching the ball with his hands and he's getting in space. And he's been one of the toughest players for Kane Womack's defensive group to go out and guard this fall camp. And so I'm really excited to see what he brings to the table, but it's not just him, right? It's Latsier Brooks, the guy who, kind of burst onto the scene on a national stage in that college football playoff game against Oklahoma, right? And behind him, it's, you need somebody to take that step as that third wide receiver. Is it a Derek Meadows who played some good reps but didn't catch a single pass last season? Is it a freshman in Sedarian Morgan? Is it Rico Scott, who's kind of been the forgotten guy in that wide receiver room? Because we'd all penciled in NC State transfer Noah Rogers to be that guy, that third wide receiver. And then he suffers a very unfortunate injury on A-Day. He's going to be out, for the first probably half of the season. But you can't just run out there with two wide receivers right now. You've got to have that third guy ready to go for week one.
Defensively, this secondary, I think, might be the best in the country. They bring back everybody. They should be really, really good this year. Have they looked as good as advertised so far through camp?
I'd almost say they look better than advertised so far through camp, which is a great thing to hear if you're an Alabama fan. Xavier Brown, Dijon Lee, two lockdown corners on those far sides. They're in the deep secondary. You've got Bray Hubbard, who's back for another season. Keon Sabb's back for another year. I keep an eye on Red Morgan at that, star Husky nickel corner position. He's somebody that's been unstoppable so far through fall camp. Ryan Grubb said he's been an absolute force to be reckoned with going up against his offense in practice. And then even behind that, the two deep, where you've got, a five-star in Jordan Edmonds. You've got Chuck McDonald, South California kid out there. You've got Ivan Taylor, who I think would probably start at 90% of other schools in the country. He's sitting on Alabama's two deep right now. Xavier Mincy as well is another guy that came in with that Xavier Brown class and Jalen Mbakwe at the time. Xavier Mincy is another guy that came in and did a lot of really good things in spurts, and he's going to be playing, that backup role to Keon Sabb. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Jaira Edwards, a five-star freshman from Maryland, has been, again, unstoppable so far through fall camp, and is somebody that Alabama's going to have to figure out, hey, how do we get this guy on the field? Because good ball play, you don't keep good ball players off the field. And so far through camp, Jaira Edwards has been a very, very good ball player. And then you've also got the Mercer transfer, Carmelo O'Neal, who Kane Womack said came in a little bit athletically ahead of schedule and has really taken to the fact that Alabama likes to rotate. Alabama likes those big, long, lengthy defenders. And he's another guy that he might be the biggest defensive back in that room just from a height perspective and a length perspective. And you don't keep good ball players off the field. Carmelo O'Neal's another guy that Alabama's going to have to find a way to get some snaps this fall.
Wyatt, I keep going back and forth on, 9-3, 10-2 this season. I think everybody's kind of looking at those four games, the home game against Georgia and A&M, and then the road trips to Knoxville and LSU. It feels like the other 8, they probably should take care of business. Maybe they do lose one of those games. In DeBoer's first couple of years, they have lost some games that necessarily people didn't think they would. But I'm somewhere in between 9-3, 10-2. How would you look at their schedule this year?
I'm looking at it the same way, 9-3, 10-2. If you're not 5-0 through the first 5 games, I think that, there's some people are going to be ready to hit that panic button. And because they've struggled with those quote unquote inferior competition, right? Like they go out and they lose to Vandy in year number 1, despite the offense, not really being slowed down in a 35-point game, or when they scored 35 in that game. Tennessee, they go up to Knoxville and control most of that first half, only come out with 7 points, and you end up losing that game. They go to Norman, Oklahoma against a team that was really struggling in the Sooners, and yet Alabama comes out and just lays a complete egg and, can't get a victory over a 500 team in that first season. And then not even mention the fact that, in the bowl game, Michigan had 1 or 2 passing yards in the second half and still won that football game against Alabama. And then last year, right, Florida State, you get the break speed off of you by an inferior team. And then Georgia and Indiana in the SEC championship and in the college football playoff, you get your teeth kicked in. So I think that's the biggest thing is you're going to lose games. That's just college football nowadays with the transfer portal and NIL. You're going to lose football games. Don't get your teeth kicked in, right? Don't go out and lose by 35 in a playoff game, right? That's what fans want to see. And so I think, being competitive in those bigger games, the Georgias, going to Neyland Stadium again, Texas A&M coming to Tuscaloosa this season, be competitive in those games. And yeah, you still want to win those games, but then don't go out and lose to a Vanderbilt, right? Don't go out and lose to a team that's fighting for bowl eligibility. So Kentucky's going to tell me a lot in week number 2 about what this Alabama team is this season. Have they kind of adjusted and fixed some of the things some of the criticisms of Kalen DeBoer so far? Because if they go out against Kentucky, who with a new head coach, new playmakers on offense, You expect Alabama to win that game pretty handedly. If they go out and it's a one-score win, I'm a little nervous about Alabama, especially when you look at that Starkville road trip the week before Georgia with Kamario Taylor, Kelly Jones, Fluff Bothwell, Anthony Evans on Mississippi State's roster there. So, but week 2 against Kentucky, that's going to tell me a lot about what Alabama and Kalen DeBoer are doing this year.
Wyatt, in about a minute before I let you leave, do you think this Bama team is good enough to win it all this year?
Good enough, yes. Experienced enough, no. I think the lack of experience on the offensive side of the football is going to rear its ugly head at some point for this Alabama team. But the talent's absolutely there. And again, you're only projected to lose one guy on offense to the NFL draft, and that's Ryan Coleman Williams. So in 2027, all that talent is still there, minus one guy. Now, that one guy is very talented, but all that talent is still in the room in Tuscaloosa on offense. And defensively, you're going to have a lot of guys, shuffle in and out with Yanze Pierre in the secondary. But Alabama does such a good job of rotating that, yeah, they're going to lose starters, but they're not going to lose a ton of snaps, right? So 2026, talented enough? Yes. Experienced enough? No. 2027 is the year that I look at and say, hey, that's the year that Alabama is really making the push for the national championship.
All right, very good. Great stuff. Wyatt Fulton, host of the Deep South College Football Show, and give him a follow on X at FultonW_. Wyatt, appreciate the time, man. Have a great season, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a good one.
Yes, sir.